And that. Bit of this. There! Now that's gonna be a proper sanguinala. Hopefully it will be a Мамка му. Здравейте, драги зрители! With the coming of the year's end, I figured we could go back to some creative thinking about how an important character death could take place. And for the Sanguinala season, why not have it be about the most important blood angel in the modern setting? And honestly, I should have expected that this would be an idea that a decent chunk of creators might come to, but thankfully, in basically all of the cases where it was mentioned that I saw, it was just stated that they expected or wanted Dante to be among the named characters that bite the bullet in the near future, without really discussing how it should happen. That is the treat I have prepared for you today. For the record, I want to stress that, personally, I don't want Dante to die. He's a great man, the greatest space marine, basically, and a phenomenal character. Not to mention that his suffering brings me pleasure. But if he were to die, it needs to be a special occasion. It can't be by just anyone's hand that his over 1500-year-long service can be ended, cause that's a big service. He is the oldest living space marine, untouched by chaos or the inconsistent time flow within the warp, and who is not entombed in a dreadnought. To put it into perspective, imagine you were born in the first 100 years of the Dark Ages in our real history, then live up to today. A staggering amount of time, made all the more spectacular by the fact that he did so in the universe of 40k, while also being one of the most active combatants in some of the setting's most dangerous battlefields and wars. A pillar of all chapters of the blood, practically a legionnaire quality warrior, and more importantly, leader. Unlike Lucius, he doesn't have any bullshit "nuh-uh, you can't kill me" powers in need of circumventing. So realistically, there are countless, not just people, but things that can slay him. But in this rat's opinion, there are 3 beings that deserve the honor of granting the Lord of the Blood Angels his duties and above all else, for the thematic connections built around them and his bloodline, as well as the specific narratives that would enhance. Very quickly, I would first like to ask you to give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for future uploads. I would greatly appreciate your support. Without further hindrance, let us go over the brass medal of the trifecta best suited for this monumental task. Of course, I am referring to Kabanda, one of the greatest bloodthirsters to exist, who has plagued the Blood Angels' lineage for 10,000 years, with some unconfirmed theories claiming that he may be in part responsible for the malignancies of their blood. And most important of all, a creature that had crossed steel with Sanguinius himself on several occasions, nearly bringing the Primarch down and earning himself the title, the Angel's Bane. It is fair to say that Kabanda is the chief rival of the chapters of the blood, given the intense ties of their fates. They have been so intertwined, and his own might is so great that at one point the Grey Knights, the most secretive chapter of all Astartes, who leave no one alive to know of their existence after an engagement in order to prevent knowledge of chaos from spreading via the existence of its greatest opposition in the Imperium's arsenal being revealed, sought an alliance with the heirs of Sanguinius, at the end of which all of the Blood Angels agreed to have their memories of the meeting erased, just to stop him. Or, to put it short, he is a terrible enemy that the chapter and Dante himself are intimately acquainted with. From the days of the Horus Heresy until now, he has continued to hound the progeny of Sanguinius, but has never really been able to succeed in inflicting any kind of wound of significance to them, until a book or official story confirmed that the Red Thirst or Black Rage stem from his involvement somehow, which I personally do not think is true. Honestly, even his title of Angel's Bane feels fairly hollow, cause yeah, in their first fight he broke Sanguinius' legs and nearly pushed him to the point where he would have accepted a chance to save his sons from the Red Thirst if he embraced a chaotic entity into himself, but ultimately he failed in doing so. Hell, afterwards, Sangi thoroughly kicked his ass, twice. And in one of his most recent appearances, when he and a horde of demons under his command manifested on Baal's moon during the Tyranid High Fleet Leviathan's invasion, he gave everyone a pretty solid scare, which eventually amounted to kind of nothing, other than temporarily redecorating the feng shui of the moon's southern hemisphere with the millions of Tyranid skulls he and his army had reaped in the shape of his personal rune before being banished, while their arts and crafts project was bombed away from orbit. I believe that, as a character, he needs a very concrete success of some kind in order to solidify his standing as the foremost rival of the Blood Angels. And since Sanguinius is no longer around, though even if he was, he'd probably just beat his ass again, the most suitable achievement he can aim for would be slaying Dante, the story of which would need to be a great tragedy, but with the possibility of a few great narrative notes for the overall setting. Firstly, a battle between these two titanic characters would be an exceptional spectacle. One of the beings that fought the Great Angel himself on close to an equal footing would make perfect logical sense to be able to actually defeat Dante in the first place, without taking away from the Lord of the Blood's own prestige as a character, added to by their thematic connection. In the fire of this tragedy, the opportunity for a new face among the Blood Angels to rise to the occasion would manifest, having him fend off the demon, thus building himself up as a worthy inheritor of both his Primarch and Chapter Master's legacy, while the tragedy itself would affirm the classic villain's own prestige as a character, finally earning him a meaningful win. Overall, it is a solid narrative that practically writes itself. Speaking of an opportunity for a new face to rise to the occasion, personally, I can't think of anyone better whose wings can be served by the flaming wind gust that would be the death of the Lord Commander than Decimus, the Prophet of the 8th Legion. He can be considered as the culmination of the Night Lords' omnibus, essentially being first claw of 10th Company distilled into a single man, carrying the trilogy's main protagonist, Talus's, and technically their Genesire Conrad Kurz's gift of foresight. Except, unlike the latter two, he seems to have been naturally meant to have it, hence his apparently unimpeded use of it. Overall, he is set up to be a spectacularly important character, despite being really young. Regrettably, however, his talents have not seen that much use in the lore so far. If anything, this rad would dare to say they are being wasted by him giving his service to Abaddon. I believe the build-up he has received requires something grand to help him stand out on his own, to do justice to First Claw. Like, for example, the rumored possibility of him reuniting the Night Lord's Legion, an exceptionally potent weapon. However, if his narrative is pushed in that direction, it will be a tough nut to crack, given how splintered, fractured, and, in an uncomfortable amount of cases, corrupted the 8th Legion has become. All of which goes without mentioning the fact that Abaddon's shadow looms menacingly over him. He would need something grand to propel him up the traitor hierarchy and grant him a lottery victory-like quantity of prestige, so that he can first jumpstart and solidify a position of influence amongst the enemies of the throne. Luckily for him, his character has a narrative chain to such an option built into him: the sword Aurum, a master-crafted power sword of the Blood Angels, originally stolen from the 9th by the Soul Hunter and now inherited by Decimus. From the very beginning of the Omnibus, we learned that the Angels of Baal continuously hunted to recover this relic, but kept getting eluded or slaughtered by Talos. If it is that important to them, learning that it has fallen in the hands of a supposed prophet that directly serves the current War Master of Chaos, I would find it very plausible for the young Astartes and the venerable Lord Commander to eventually find themselves on the same battlefield. From then on, it's only a matter of whether youthful vigor coupled with partial future sight can overcome superior strength seasoned with vast experience. Admittedly, this is the least likely of the three, but the extension it would provide the Night Lords and Blood Angels rivalry is a seductive prospect. It would be somewhat of a reversal of their roles, since during the heresy it was the sons of Sanguinius taking down named child heir of the Night Haunter, and Dante's corpse would make an incredibly solid foundation for Decimus to build his own independent base, from which his legion may one day be reborn in proper order. Alas, by far the best and most suitable being that this rat deems worthy to deliver the angel's mercy to Dante is none other than the Blood Angels' very own High Chaplain, Astorath the Grim. What? Why would a member of his own chapter be the best person to kill his own Lord Commander? Some of you might ask. But please, follow along, as this one will take a bit of clarification and build-up based around what Astorath's own duty is. I have already mentioned the Blood Angels' gene seed flaws. The red thirst, which induces upon them a near irresistible craving to consume blood, and, if overindulged, as seen in the graphic novel series Blood Quest, it leads the Brothers of the Blood to mutate into hulking monstrosities. But of interest to us for this case is the Black Rage. Its claws sank into the Legion's bloodline after their Primarch's death at the hands of his brother, Horus Lupercal, at the end of the Siege of Terra, and has continued to plague them since then. At first, it slowly begins to eat away at a warrior's consciousness and perception of reality, pulling him towards insanity by supposedly filling him with the same rage and hatred felt by their gene-sire during the heresy. Or it can happen rapidly in situations of great duress, until his mind is overtaken, making him believe he is there, or that he is Sanguinius himself at his final duel, seeing practically everyone around him as the War Master of Chaos, as an urge of utmost destruction surges within him and removes any conscious or subconscious inhibitions his body may have. While this state turns the Blood Angels it claims into arguably the most dangerous Astartes to face in melee combat, the rampant death they deal in their blind fury to both friend as well as foe makes them a weakness that may result in the Imperium's higher powers to deem the entire chapter or bloodline of the Angel to be corrupted and thus sentenced with extermination. Due to this, the affected brothers of all chapters sired by the 9th Legion are kept secret, locked away until they can recover, which regrettably almost never happens, as there is barely a handful of Astartes that have been able to return to their senses after falling to the rage, so most often they are inducted into the chapter's death company, donning black armor and set loose upon their foes so that they can find noble death in service to their kin. Speaking specifically about the Blood Angels chapter, any death company that survive their engagement, along with any brothers that fall to the rage during battle and are not able to be safely recovered, are granted the Angel's mercy by the hands and axe blade of their High Chaplain. Both for the sons of Sanguinius and us, the enjoyers of the lore, I would wager that Dante succumbing to the Black and meeting his end from the Warden of the Flaw, because let's be honest, he of all people receiving the power boost it brings will survive practically anything you throw at him, would be a far greater tragedy than simply dying. And of course, there is a narrative avenue in which this could take place in a way that makes it all the more bittersweet. The Blood Angels possess a set of relics known as the Scrolls of Sanguinius, scrolls that hold a written record of many of their Primarchs' visions of the future. In one such vision, the Great Angel beheld days of great darkness brought on by a great hunger, which would consume Baal itself and would try to devour the Emperor as well. But a golden warrior, bearing Sanguinius' own face, would stand in defense of his father and lay down his life to protect him. Some believe that this golden warrior was Sanguinius himself in the battle against his traitor brother, but the Gene-Sire of the 9th refutes the notion in the scroll's record. Quote, "I do not know who this golden warrior was. He appeared similar to my herald, and I saw my own face depicted upon his mask, but he was not me. And he wore a form of armor I do not know. It is certain that he was one of my sons, and whether his sacrifice will prove to be in vain or not, I know this, that he was a noble warrior, true and purer than any of his age, and I love him for that, for it means that my works for the Emperor, at least, have not been undertaken in vain, and that my unavoidable death might also prove fruitful." Needless to say, many others have speculated that this vision is one of Dante, a sentiment this rat tends to agree with. This is how I believe the best end of the greatest Astartes of his age ought to be. At some point in the nebulous future, a great calamity would arise, plunging the galaxy in darkness. Its tendrils, be they made out of the machinations of Xenos or the ambitions of traitors, would stretch out in an attempt to swallow mankind's cradle and its master. But at the last gate, as it was over 10 millennia ago, a true Angel of the Blood would stand in opposition to it. Whatever source and nature of the calamity may be, in the moments before their clash, this angel, Lord Commander Dante, would come to see it has only one face: Horus. At the battle's end, near mortally wounded, he would fall to his knees, surrounded by a field of enemy dead, interwoven with the blood rubies of his slain brothers. And at the very last heartbeats of his life, after being found by the Redeemer of the Lost, his mind would return to him for the briefest of slivers, as his friend would grimly utter, "Your duty is finally done." gifting the Golden Warrior serene satisfaction in fulfilling his service before saving him from the rage blackening his mind. And so, should there ever come a time when the venerable Lord Commander Dante earns his duty's end, these are the three individuals and surrounding circumstances under which I believe that death would be best presented and served. Solidifying the prowess, presence, and importance of one of the most important villains from the setting's mythology. Gifting a rising star within the darkness the chance to shine out of its subservient confines. Or as the final burning of the blazing climax of a most venerable life that has rightfully earned the love and admiration of his peers, forefathers, and above all, the Warhammer community at large. Though that is all simply my belief. How about yourselves? Do you think that there is a better narrative through the circumstances of which Dante's rest can be achieved? Who do you believe is the best being to be given the privilege of taking the life of Sanguinius's greatest son? I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. But for now, until our next meeting, I wish you all a belated Christmas, a not totally depressing Sanguinala, and a radiant, successful, and happy New Year. Do viždene.